I will never allow a farmer's daughter into this family. 10 words that tore a family apart. One father, one son, one impossible choice that led to 3 years of dead silence. Here's the thing Edward Carter didn't know when those words left his mouth. Sometimes the people you push away, they don't crumble. They build something you never saw coming. And sometimes a man worth billions has to lose absolutely everything to figure out what he should have been chasing all along. This is about power, about ego, and about the moment a father finally understood that all his money meant jack compared to what his son found in a place he refused to look. Real quick, before we get into this, hit that like button if you've ever had to pick between what your family wanted and what your heart needed, because what you're about to hear is gonna mess with you. Alright, let's rewind to where it all fell apart. Edward Carter wasn't just rich. He breathed money. 62. Self-made. The kind of guy who could calculate a profit margin faster than you could finish saying good morning. Built Carter Industries from nothing. A garage startup that turned into a tech empire worth billions. Patents. Real estate. The kind of investments that made other wealthy people nervous. He did it his way. No handouts. No shortcuts. Zero tolerance for weakness. Edward believed in bloodlines. In protecting what you build. Success wasn't just something you achieved. It was a fortress you defended with your life. And Daniel? Daniel was supposed to be the heir to that fortress. 24 years old. Brilliant kid. The type who would take apart computers at 8 and rebuild them better by 9. MIT grad. Top of his class. He had Edward's brain, but not his father's cold heart. Daniel was kind. He asked questions that didn't end in dollar signs. He cared about people, not just portfolios. And honestly, that terrified Edward. Because Daniel wasn't supposed to care. He was supposed to inherit. Then the summer of 2018 happened. Daniel took what Edward thought was a soul-searching trip. A few weeks out in rural Ohio before stepping into the family business. Edward figured fine, let the kid play farmer for a minute. He'll come back ready to put on a suit. Except Daniel didn't come back in a few weeks. He came back 3 months later. Different. Almost glowing. And when he walked into his father's penthouse office in Manhattan, hands in his pockets, smile on his face, Edward just knew something was off. Dad, we gotta talk. Edward glanced up from his desk, fingers steepled like he was about to pass judgment. About time. Got 3 board meetings lined up for you next week. Hoffman wants to discuss the merger. And I met someone. Edward froze. Come again. Her name's Lily. Lily Hale. The temperature in that room dropped about 10 degrees. Edward's eyes narrowed, scanning his son like a contract he didn't trust. Hale. Never heard that name before. What family is she from? Daniel smiled like he knew exactly what was coming. She's not from a family like that, Dad. She's from a farm. Small one. About 60 acres outside Columbus. Her parents have been working that land for 3 generations. Long pause. You can feel the tension building. Edward's jaw went tight. A farm. Yeah. Sustainable agriculture. Organic produce. They're doing incredible work with. Stop. Edward stood up. Slow. The kind of slow that makes your stomach drop. You're telling me you spent 3 months rolling around in the dirt with some farmer's daughter? Dad, she's... No. Edward's voice sliced through the room. I didn't spend 40 years building this empire so my son could throw it away on some girl who smells like hay. Daniel's smile disappeared. His fists clenched. You don't even know her. I don't need to. I know the type. Small-town girl sees a rich kid, sees dollar signs. Oldest trick in the book. That's not. She's using you. Those 3 words just hung there like poison. Daniel's voice went quiet. Dangerous quiet. You're wrong. Edward let out this cold, bitter laugh. Son, I've been in this world longer than you've been alive. I've seen gold diggers in Prada heels. You really think I can't spot one in overalls? Look, if you've ever had someone you love dismissed like they're nothing, hit that like button right now. Because what's about to happen? It gets intense. Daniel stood there, heart pounding, hands shaking. For the first time in his life, he wasn't looking at his father like a hero. He was looking at him like a complete stranger. Dad, I'm proposing to her. Edward's scotch glass slipped from his hand. Didn't shatter. Just thudded onto the desk. Amber liquid spreading like blood. What did you just say? I'm asking Lily to marry me. Edward's face went red. Not embarrassed red. Furious red. Over my dead body. Then I guess we've got a problem. You think this is a joke? Edward slammed his fist down. You think you can walk in here and tell me you're gonna ruin everything I built? I'm not ruining anything. I'm living my life. You're throwing it away. No, you threw it away the second you decided my life was yours to control. Both of them breathing hard. Edward stepped around the desk, towering over his son. 62 years of power and pride packed into one man. You don't get what you're giving up. I understand perfectly. Do you? You get that the second you marry that girl, you're done? No board seat. No trust fund. No Carter name protecting you. Daniel's voice didn't shake. I never needed your name, Dad. I needed a father. Edward actually recoiled like he'd been slapped. For just a moment, barely a heartbeat, something human flickered across his face. But pride's a hell of a drug. And Edward Carter was hooked. Fine. You want to play grown up? Let's make this real simple. He walked back to his desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a folder. This is your inheritance, your trust, your future, everything I built for you. $480 million. Sitting there waiting for you the day you turn 25. He slid the folder across the desk. Or, you can have her. Daniel stared at the folder, then at his father. You're serious. As a heart attack. You're actually making me choose. I'm giving you clarity, son. Money or fantasy. Empire or fairy tale. Reality or some barefoot girl who'll have you living in a trailer in 5 years. Daniel's hands trembled. Not from fear. From pure rage. You really think this is about money? It's always about money, Daniel. Anyone who says different is either lying or broke. Daniel picked up the folder. Edward smiled. Victory. Then Daniel tore it clean in half. I choose Lily. Edward's smile vanished. You're making a mistake. No, Dad. I'm making a choice. Something you stopped doing a long time ago. Daniel turned toward the door. Daniel. I'll send someone for my stuff. You walk out that door, you're done. No crawling back. No second chances. Daniel stopped. Looked back over his shoulder. I don't need a second chance. I just needed you to see me. But you never did. Goodbye, Dad. The door clicked shut. And Edward Carter, billionaire, titan, king of his own empire, stood alone in a room full of everything he'd ever wanted, except his son. Drop a broken heart if that hit you, because 3 years of silence, about to teach Edward a lesson money could never touch. Keep watching. The weeks after Daniel left were quiet, too damn quiet. Edward told himself it was fine. Daniel would come back. They always do. A few months of real life would knock some sense into him. He'd see what it's like without a safety net and come crawling back. That's what Edward kept telling himself. At board meetings, charity galas, at night, alone in a penthouse that suddenly felt massive and empty. He buried himself in work, closed a $2 billion merger, opened 3 new international offices, made the cover of Forbes twice. But every time his phone rang, his heart jumped. Maybe it's him. It never was. Christmas came. Daniel's stocking stayed empty. His birthday passed. No call. Edward sent emails. Ignored. Texts. Read receipts, but never a reply. He had his assistant track Daniel down quietly. Find out where he was living, what he was doing. The report came back. Living in rural Ohio. Address withheld at subject's request. Edward crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash. He'll be back, he muttered to nobody. But a year went by. Then 2. Then 3. And the silence. Man, the silence started to hurt badly. Not like a cut. Like rot. Something eating away at him from the inside that no amount of scotch or success could numb. Edward stopped going to the club. Stopped hosting dinners. His friends noticed. Business partners whispered. Heard his son ran off. Married some nobody. Edward cut him off. Pride will kill you faster than a bad ticker. And you know what? Maybe they were right. Because late at night, when the city lights couldn't drown out the quiet, Edward would sit in his study staring at this old photo on his desk. Daniel, 7 years old, missing 2 front teeth, holding up a trophy from his first science fair, smiling. When did I stop seeing that smile? If you've ever realized way too late that you pushed away someone you loved, drop a comment. Because Edward Carter was about to learn the hardest truth of his life. Pride costs way more than money ever could. It's 3 years now. 1,095 days of absolutely nothing. Edward convinced himself Daniel was struggling, barely scraping by, living in some beat-up farmhouse with peeling paint and a leaky roof. That Lily probably resented him by now. finally realizing she'd tied herself to a guy with no fortune, no future. He'll figure out his mistake eventually. That's what Edward believed. Because admitting anything else? Admitting Daniel might actually be happy? That would mean Edward was wrong. And Edward Carter didn't do wrong. But the guilt? Man, the guilt was relentless. It showed up in the mirror, in the empty chair at dinner, in the way his chest tightened every time he saw a father and son laughing on the street. He started throwing money at charities. Huge amounts. Scholarships for low-income kids. Grants for small family businesses. His PR team called it philanthropy. Edward called it penance. But it wasn't enough. Because no amount of money could fill the hole his son left behind. Then one morning, Edward woke up and this thought hit him like a freight train. What if I never see him again? What if Daniel got married and Edward wasn't there? What if he had kids, grandkids, and Edward never met them? What if the last words he ever said to his son were, "You're done"? Suddenly, the empire didn't matter. The legacy didn't matter. Edward sat at his desk, hands shaking, and did something he hadn't done in decades. He cried. Not the quiet, controlled kind. The kind that breaks you wide open. And when the tears stopped, one thought remained. I have to find him. Drop a folded hands if you believe people deserve second chances. Because Edward Carter was about to take the hardest drive of his life. Edward didn't tell anyone where he was going. Not his assistant. Not his board. Not even his driver. He rented a car. Something he hadn't done in 20 years. And typed the address into his GPS with shaking fingers. Hill Family Farm. Columbus, Ohio. 6-hour drive. He left before sunrise, watching the city skyline fade in his rearview like a kingdom he no longer ruled. The highway stretched on forever, and for the first time in years, Edward had nothing to do but think. He pictured Daniel broke, exhausted, maybe too proud to ask for help but secretly drowning. He pictured Lily, resentful, bitter, realizing she'd trapped herself with a guy who had nothing to offer. He pictured showing up just in time, offering help, offering redemption. I'll apologize. I'll help them out. We'll fix this. That's what he told himself. Because the alternative, that Daniel was actually thriving, that he'd built something beautiful without his father's money. That was unthinkable. The landscape changed. Skyscrapers turned into trees. Highways became dirt roads. Endless concrete became endless fields. Edward gripped the steering wheel tighter. This place felt alien. No boardrooms. No power lunches. No valet parking. Just land. Sky. Space. The GPS chimed. In 500 feet. Turn right. Edward's heart hammered. What if Daniel didn't want to see him? What if he slammed the door in his face? What if? You have arrived at your destination. Edward stopped the car and stared. What he saw. It wasn't anything close to what he expected. Smash that like if you're on the edge of your seat. And drop your predictions in the comments. What do you think Daniel built? If you're not subscribed, hit that button and turn on notifications because what Edward Carter found is about to flip everything. Here we go. Edward sat there, engine still running, hands frozen on the wheel. Because this wasn't some broken down farm. This was a kingdom. 60 acres of pristine farmland stretched out in front of him. Not chaotic, not overgrown, organized, modern, and alive. Rows of greenhouses gleaming in the morning sun. Automated irrigation systems glinting like silver veins. Solar panels lining the roofs. Wind turbines spinning lazily in the distance. Workers moving between the fields. Not hunched over and exhausted, but purposeful. Some of them were even smiling. And at the center of it all stood this building Edward didn't see coming. A barn, yeah, but renovated. Modernized. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A wraparound deck. The kind of architectural lighting you'd see in a design magazine. Above the main entrance, carved into this massive wooden beam, were words that stopped Edward's heart. Hail, Carter Agricultural Innovations. Sustainable farming for America. Edward couldn't breathe. Carter. Daniel kept the name. Slowly, Edward stepped out of the car. His Italian leather shoes crunched on gravel that had been meticulously maintained. A young woman walked up, mid-20s, clipboard in hand, confident stride. Can I help you, sir? Edward cleared his throat. I'm looking for Daniel Carter. Her face lit up. Oh, you here for the tour? We've got a group starting in 20 minutes. Daniel usually leads them himself. No, Edward hesitated. I'm his father. Recognition. Then something Edward didn't expect. Pity. Ooh, ooh, Mr. Carter. I'll let him know you're here. She turned and spoke quietly into a radio. Edward stood there feeling smaller than he had in decades. Workers passed by. A few nodded politely. One guy, older, wearing a Carhartt jacket, stopped and just stared. You're him, aren't you? The dad. Edward stiffened. Yes. The man shook his head slowly. Shame. Your boy's one of the best men I've ever worked for. Hope you're here to make things right. He walked off before Edward could say a word. And then, Dad. Edward turned. There was Daniel. Comment wow if you didn't see that coming. Daniel didn't just survive, he thrived. If that gave you chills, hit that like button and tell me. Have you ever proved someone wrong who doubted you? Drop your story below. Make sure you're subscribed because this reunion's about to get even more emotional. Daniel stood at the edge of the greenhouse, sunlight spilling around him. He looked good, better than good. He looked whole, tanned, fit, wearing work boots and a flannel rolled up to his elbows, dirt smudged on his forearm. His hair was longer, sun-bleached at the tips, but it was his eyes that stopped Edward cold. They were bright, alive. That weight Daniel used to carry, the pressure, the expectations, it was gone. Edward opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Daniel walked closer, slow and steady, like he was approaching a wounded animal. Didn't think I'd ever see you again, Daniel said quietly. Edward's voice cracked. I had to come. Daniel nodded. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel gestured toward the farm. Want to see what we built? Edward could only nod. Daniel led him through the property, and with every step, Edward's assumptions shattered. The greenhouses weren't just functional, they were revolutionary. Hydroponic systems Daniel designed himself. Sensor networks monitoring soil health in real time. Apps connecting local restaurants directly to the farm for same-day delivery. We supply 40 restaurants in a 100-mile radius, Daniel explained as they walked. Farm to table. Zero pesticides. We've cut water usage by 60% compared to traditional farms. Edward stared. You built this. We did. Me and Lily. Her parents helped at first. But once we got investors interested. Investors? Daniel smiled. Yeah. Sustainable agriculture's a $12 billion industry now, Dad. People want ethically grown food. We've got venture capital backing, partnership offers from 3 grocery chains, and a waiting list for our consulting services. Edward felt the ground tilt. This wasn't a struggle. This was a success story. You did this without me. Daniel stopped walking, turned to face his father. No, Dad. I did this without your money, but I thought about you every single day. Edward's throat went tight. They reached the main house, the renovated barn. Inside, it was stunning. Open concept, reclaimed wood, modern appliances, family photos covering the walls. And then Edward saw her, Lily, standing in the kitchen, flour on her hands, apron tied around her waist, auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, freckles across her nose. She wasn't polished. She wasn't trying to be. She was real. And when she smiled at Daniel, the whole room just lit up. Lily, Daniel said softly, this is my dad. Lily wiped her hands on a towel and walked over. No hesitation. No fear. She extended her hand. Mr. Carter, heard a lot about you. Edward shook her hand, stunned by the strength of her grip. I'm sorry, for what I said, for how It's okay. Lily interrupted gently. You didn't know me. I get it. But Edward heard what she didn't say. You didn't even try. Daddy. A tiny voice. Edward turned. And there, running across the hardwood floor in bare feet and overalls was a little girl, maybe 3 years old, blonde curls bouncing. Daniel's eyes. Lily's smile. She crashed into Daniel's legs, and he scooped her up, spinning her around. There's my jelly bean. The little girl giggled, then looked curiously at Edward. Who's that? Daniel's voice went soft. Sweetheart. This is your grandfather. Edward's knees buckled. He had a granddaughter, a little girl who'd existed for 3 years without him knowing. 3 years of birthdays, first words, first steps, gone. Because of pride, because of control. The little girl tilted her head. Grandpa! Edward's vision blurred. His chest heaved. And for the second time in 3 days, Edward Carter, the billionaire, empire builder, man of steel, broke. If you're crying right now, you're not alone. Drop a red heart if this moment got you emotional. A granddaughter he never knew existed. If that doesn't make you think about the people in your life you need to reconnect with, I don't know what will. Hit subscribe for more stories that hit this deep. And share this, tag someone who needs to see it. What happens next changes everything. Don't click away. Edward collapsed. Not physically, though his knees did buckle. But something inside him just gave out. All the walls, All the armor, all the pride that kept him standing for 62 years, crumbled. He sank into a chair at the kitchen table, hands covering his face, and the sound that came out was raw. I'm sorry. God, Daniel, I'm so sorry. Daniel set his daughter down gently. Go find mommy. Okay, Jellybean? The little girl ran off and Daniel knelt beside his father. Dad, I was wrong. Edward's voice shattered. Wrong about everything. About Lily. About you. About what matters. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. Tears he hadn't let fall in decades. I thought I was protecting you. I thought money and legacy and the Carter name were the most important things I could give you. He gestured helplessly around the room. But you didn't need any of it. You built something better. Something real. And I wasn't there. I threw you away because you wouldn't fit into my plan. Because I couldn't control you. And now you have a daughter. A little girl who doesn't even know who I am. Because I was too proud. Too stupid. Daniel's eyes were wet now too. Dad, I missed 3 years, Daniel. 3 years I'll never get back. Birthdays, Christmases, the moment you became a father. I missed all of it. Because I thought I knew better. Because I thought money was power. Edward's voice dropped to a whisper. But the truth is, I've been powerless this whole time. Without you, I had nothing. Daniel pulled up a chair, sat across from his father. You know why I chose Lily? Daniel asked quietly. Edward shook his head. Because she saw me. Not my last name. Not my bank account. Not the empire I was supposed to inherit. She saw the guy who wanted to build things with his hands. Who cared about soil health and crop rotation and whether the workers got fair wages. He leaned forward. She saw the parts of me you didn't think mattered. I'm not saying that to hurt you, Dad. I'm saying it because you taught me a lot. How to think strategically. How to solve problems. How to never give up. Daniel's voice cracked. But you never taught me how to live. And Lily? Lily taught me that. Edward looked at his son, really looked at him, and saw a man he barely recognized. A man who was better than him. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Edward whispered. Daniel smiled sadly. Maybe not. But I'm giving it to you anyway. Edward's head dropped. Why? Because holding on to anger was like drinking poison and waiting for you to die. I forgave you a long time ago, Dad. Not for you. For me. Edward's shoulders shook. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix the past, Daniel said. But you can show up for the future. Lily appeared in the doorway, holding their daughter's hand. She gave Daniel a questioning look. Daniel nodded. Lily walked over, set a hand gently on Edward's shoulder. There's always room at our table, Mr. Carter. If you want it. Edward looked up at her. This woman he dismissed, insulted, hated, and saw nothing but grace. I don't deserve you people, he choked out. No, Lily said with a small smile. But we're giving you a chance anyway. That's what family does. Comment Dove if you believe in the power of forgiveness. If you've ever forgiven someone who didn't deserve it, share your story. I want to hear it. And if you haven't liked this video yet, do it now because we're heading into the most beautiful part. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss these stories. What happens next is what this whole thing was building toward. Edward stayed for dinner. Nothing fancy. No 5-star chefs. No imported wine. Lily made roasted chicken, vegetables fresh from their own greenhouse, homemade bread that smelled like childhood. They sat around a wooden table Daniel built himself. And for the first time in years, Edward felt something he'd forgotten existed. Peace. The little girl, Emma they called her, sat on a booster seat, chattering away about the goats and the chickens and the big dog named Biscuit who liked stealing socks. Edward just listened, mesmerized. Grandpa, do you like goats? Emma asked, kicking her feet happily. Edward's voice was hoarse. I don't know. Never met one. Emma's eyes went huge. You've never met a goat? Daniel laughed. Most people haven't. That's sad. Emma declared. Grandpa, after dinner, I'll show you Peanut. He's my favorite. He eats everything. Edward's lips trembled into a smile. I'd like that. Emma beamed. After dinner, Emma dragged Edward outside by the hand. Tiny fingers wrapped around his, and introduced him to every animal on the farm. Peanut the goat, Daisy the cow, the chickens whose names Edward couldn't keep straight but Emma rattled off like scripture. And this Emma said, pointing to a small garden plot, is where Daddy and I planted sunflowers. They're gonna be really tall. Edward knelt down, his expensive suit getting dirty probably for the first time ever. Will you show me when they bloom? He asked softly. Emma nodded seriously. Aha, you gotta come back though. I will. I promise. Daddy says promises are really important. Edward's throat tightened. He's right. Emma smiled and hugged him. Sudden, fierce, unself-conscious. Edward froze. Then his arms came up, slowly, carefully, and he hugged her back. And something inside him shattered and healed at the same time. Later, as the sun set and fireflies started their dance, Edward sat on the porch with Daniel and Lily. I'm gonna do better, Edward said quietly. Don't know how yet, but I'm gonna try. Daniel nodded. That's all we're asking. Edward looked out at the land, the greenhouses glowing softly in the dusk, the wind turbines turning like sentinels. You built something incredible here, son. Something that actually matters. Daniel smiled. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. I'm proud of you, Edward added, voice breaking. Should have said that 3 years ago. Should have said it every day. But I'm saying it now. I'm so damn proud of you. Daniel's eyes shimmered. I'm proud of you too, Dad. For coming here. For apologizing. That took guts. Edward laughed bitterly. Took me long enough. Better late than never, Lily said gently. Edward looked at her. You're a hell of a woman, Lily Hale. I'm sorry I never gave you a chance. Lily smiled. You're giving me one now. That's what counts. Edward stayed the night. In a guest room with quilts Lily's grandmother made. No silk seats. No room service. Just warmth. And when he woke up to roosters and Emma giggling outside his window, Edward Carter realized something that shook him to his core. This was the richest he'd ever felt. If this story touched you, subscribe right now. Turn on the notification bell. Because we make stories like this that change how you see things. Drop a comment. What's the most valuable thing you own that money can't buy? I'm reading every one. And share this. Send it to your parents, your kids, anyone who needs to remember what really matters. We're about to wrap with a message you need to hear. Edward didn't rush back to Manhattan. He stayed for a week. He helped Daniel fix a fence. He learned how to collect eggs. He let Emma paint his nails with dirt and call it nature art. And when he finally did leave, he left different. Humbled, softer and human. He drove back to the city, but the empire waiting for him didn't feel the same anymore. The boardrooms felt empty. The penthouse felt cold. So Edward made changes. Started spending weekends in Ohio. Brought in agricultural consultants to help Daniel expand. Funded scholarships for rural kids studying sustainable farming. Not because he wanted control, but because he wanted to contribute. And at Daniel and Lily's kitchen table, surrounded by dirt and laughter and love that didn't cost a dime, Edward Carter finally got it. You can build an empire with your hands, but you build a legacy with your heart. Money buys you power, status, and influence, but it can't buy the sound of your granddaughter's laugh. Can't buy the pride in your son's eyes when he forgives you. Can't buy the grace of a woman who welcomes you into her home after you called her worthless. Edward learned the hard way that the richest people aren't the ones with the biggest bank accounts. They're the ones who know what actually matters. And sometimes, real success isn't climbing to the top. So before you go, what's one relationship you need to repair before it's too late? Drop it in the comments. Be real. Be vulnerable. This community's here for you. If the story moved you, smash that like button so more people can see this message. Subscribe if you haven't, and turn on notifications so you never miss these beautiful stories. And share this. Send it to your family group chat. Post it. Tag someone who needs to hear this today. Remember, the greatest thing you can leave behind isn't money. It is love. See you in the next one. Until then, go hug someone you love.